The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her dressing room mirror. Her reflection showed a woman who had grown into her royal role with grace and dignity over the years. Today felt different somehow, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. The familiar weight of her engagement ring caught the light as she moved her hand to brush a strand of hair behind her ear. The ring had been Princess Diana's once, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds that had captured the world's attention when Prince William had proposed with it years ago. But today, Catherine found herself looking at it differently. The deep blue stone seemed to hold secrets, memories of a woman she had never met, but whose legacy she carried every day. Down the corridor, Prince William was already dressed in his navy suit, reviewing his schedule for the day with his private secretary. The couple had grown comfortable in their routines, their partnership strengthened by years of shared duties and the challenges that came with their position. William glanced up as Catherine entered the room, her presence immediately brightening his mood. "Good morning," she said softly, moving to stand beside him at the window that overlooked the palace gardens. The grounds were perfectly manicured, a testament to the centuries of tradition that surrounded their daily lives. William wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Ready for today's engagements?" he asked, though he could sense something was on her mind. After all their years together, he had learned to read her moods, to understand the subtle changes in her expression. Catherine nodded, but her fingers unconsciously turned the ring around her finger. It was a habit she had developed over the years, a small gesture that helped her think through complex situations. "William," she began, her voice carrying a weight that made him turn to face her fully. "I've been thinking about something." The palace around them hummed with its usual morning activity. Staff members moved quietly through the halls, preparing for the day's events. Security personnel conducted their routine checks, ensuring that the royal family's safety remained the top priority. In the kitchen, chefs were already beginning preparations for the lunch that would be served to visiting dignitaries later in the day. But in this moment in their private space, it felt like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. "What's troubling you?" William asked, his concern evident. He had seen this look before, usually when Catherine was working through a particularly challenging decision or when she was preparing to tackle a difficult conversation. Catherine turned to face the window again, watching as gardeners tended to the flower beds below. "It's about the ring," she said finally. "About your mother's ring." William's expression shifted slightly. Discussions about his mother were never taken lightly, though they had become easier over the years. Diana's memory was something he had learned to honor while also moving forward with his own life. "What about it?" he asked gently. "I've been wearing it for so long now," Catherine continued, her voice thoughtful. "And I've tried to honor what it represents, to carry on the legacy that comes with it. But sometimes I wonder if I'm truly doing justice to what it means." The ring had indeed become a symbol far beyond just their engagement. The public had watched Catherine wear it to countless events, had seen her honor Diana's memory while also making her own mark as a royal. Fashion magazines had analyzed every angle of it, and royal watchers had noted how Catherine had chosen to have it slightly resized, but otherwise left unchanged from when Diana had worn it. William was quiet for a moment, processing her words. His relationship with his mother's memory was complex, filled with love and loss, pride, and the weight of expectations. "You know she would have loved you," he said softly. "She would have been so proud of the woman you've become, of the mother you are to our children." Catherine smiled at that, thinking of George, Charlotte, and Louis. Her children had grown up hearing stories about their grandmother they would never meet, learning about her compassion and her dedication to causes close to her heart. In many ways, Catherine had tried to model her own approach to royal duties on what she had learned about Diana. "I know that," Catherine replied. "But I've been thinking that maybe it's time for me to make my own mark, to create something that represents our partnership, our journey together." The implication of her words hung in the air between them. William studied her face, trying to understand exactly what she was suggesting. "Are you saying you want to stop wearing it?" he asked carefully. "Not stop wearing it entirely," Catherine clarified quickly, "but Maybe there's a way to honor both the past and our future. I've been researching some options, speaking with jewelry designers who specialize in royal pieces. William was intrigued now. His wife rarely brought up ideas without having thoroughly thought them through. What kind of options? Catherine moved to her dressing table and opened a small drawer, retrieving a leather portfolio. Inside were sketches and photographs, carefully organized presentations of various jewelry designs. I've been working with a designer who specializes in creating pieces that incorporate existing stones, she explained, laying out the materials on the table between them. The sketches showed various ring designs, each one incorporating the sapphire and diamond from Diana's original ring, but in new settings. Some featured additional stones. Others showcased different arrangements of the existing gems. All of them maintained the elegance and significance of the original, while adding elements that spoke to Catherine's own style and preferences. The idea would be to create something that honors your mother's memory while also representing us, our marriage, our family, Catherine explained, pointing to specific design elements. We could incorporate stones that represent our children, perhaps elements that speak to causes we've championed together. William leaned over the sketches, studying each design carefully. He could see the thought and care that had gone into every detail. This one, he said, pointing to a design that featured the original sapphire in a new setting surrounded by additional diamonds and 3 smaller stones. Tell me about this one. The 3 smaller stones would represent George, Charlotte, and Louis, Catherine explained, her excitement beginning to show. And this band design incorporates a pattern that's meaningful to both of us. It's based on the Celtic knots that were featured in our wedding ceremony. The design was stunning, managing to be both respectful of the original ring's significance and completely fresh in its own right. It would clearly be Catherine's ring, while still honoring Diana's memory. The designer has assured me that the original ring would be preserved, Catherine continued. It would be carefully documented and stored, perhaps eventually to be passed down to one of our children or their children. But this would allow me to have something that truly represents our story. William was quiet for a long moment, and Catherine felt her heart rate increase slightly. She had spent weeks considering this idea, but she needed his support for it to move forward. The ring wasn't just hers. It carried the weight of royal history and family memory. What made you start thinking about this? William asked finally. Catherine sat down in the chair beside the table, her hands folded in her lap. Several things, really. Last month, when we visited that jewelry exhibition at the Victoria and Albert Museum, I was struck by how pieces evolve over generations. How families add their own elements to treasured items while still preserving their essence. She paused, gathering her thoughts. And then there was that conversation we had with the children about grandmother Diana. Charlotte asked why she couldn't see grandmother's ring differently, maybe see it the way grandmother would have wanted it for our family. William smiled at that. His daughter had always been particularly perceptive, often asking questions that got to the heart of complex issues. What did you tell her? I told her that maybe she was right to think about it that way, Catherine replied. That perhaps the best way to honor someone's memory is to let their gift grow and evolve with the family they loved. The morning light had shifted as they talked, now streaming directly through the window and illuminating the sketches spread across the table. Each design seemed to catch the light differently, revealing new details and possibilities. There's something else, Catherine added, her voice growing more serious. I've been thinking about what kind of legacy we want to leave for our children. Not just the titles and the duties, but the personal elements. If I were to pass away, I would want them to have something that truly represented our love story, our family, our journey together. William reached across and took her hand, the one wearing Diana's ring. You're not going anywhere, he said firmly, though he understood her point. Royal life came with unique considerations about legacy and inheritance that most families never had to contemplate. I know that's the plan, Catherine replied with a small smile. But I also know how much it would have meant to you if your mother had left behind something that represented her growth, her evolution as a person, and as a mother. Not just a moment in time, but a piece that told her whole story. The truth of her words settled between them. Diana's ring was beautiful and significant, but it represented a specific moment, her engagement to Charles, the hope and joy of that time. It didn't reflect the complexity of her life, her growth as a mother, her dedication to her causes, or even the challenges she had faced. "So you want to create something that tells our story," William said, understanding dawning in his voice. "Exactly," Catherine replied. "Something that represents not just our engagement, but our marriage, our children, the work we've done together, the challenges we've overcome." William picked up one of the sketches again, this time examining it with new eyes. The design was sophisticated and meaningful, clearly the work of someone who understood both jewelry design and royal significance. "Who is this designer?" he asked. "Sarah Henley," Catherine replied. "She's worked on pieces for several royal families, and she specializes in what she calls evolutionary jewelry, taking existing pieces and creating new works that honor the original while serving current needs." William nodded approvingly. The name was familiar. Sarah Henley had an excellent reputation for discretion and craftsmanship. "Have you spoken with her about the timeline for something like this?" "She estimates it would take about 6 months to complete, assuming we can finalize the design within the next few weeks," Catherine explained. She would work with the crown jewelers to ensure that everything is done to the highest standards and with complete security. The conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock on the door. William's private secretary entered after being invited, carrying a tablet with the day's updated schedule. "Your Royal Highnesses, I wanted to confirm that the visit to the Children's Hospital has been moved to 2 o'clock to accommodate the Prime Minister's schedule change." "Thank you, James," William replied. "We'll be ready." After the secretary left, Catherine and William found themselves alone again with the sketches and the weight of the decision before them. What would this mean for public perception? William asked, always conscious of how their personal decisions would be received by the press and the public. Catherine had clearly considered this aspect as well. "I think it could be presented as an evolution, a way of honoring the past while building for the future. The designer has suggested that we could have the new ring blessed in a private ceremony, perhaps even incorporating some elements from our wedding service. And the original ring would be preserved and displayed appropriately, perhaps in a special exhibition about royal jewelry or family history. It would still be accessible to the public, but in a way that honors its significance as a historical piece." William was beginning to see the vision Catherine had developed. It wasn't about rejecting his mother's memory or the significance of the original ring. Instead, it was about creating something that honored the past while serving the present and future. "There's one more thing," Catherine added softly. "I think this might actually help the children understand their connection to Grandmother Diana even better. Right now, the ring represents something from before they existed. But if we create something that includes representations of them, it becomes part of their story too." The idea was compelling. George, Charlotte, and Louis had grown up knowing about their grandmother's ring, but it remained something from another time, another story. A new piece that incorporated their representations would make Diana's legacy feel more immediate and personal to them. "You've really thought this through," William said, admiration clear in his voice. "I have," Catherine confirmed, "because I know how important this is, not just to us, but to your mother's memory and to our children's future." William gathered the sketches together, studying each one more carefully. The designs were beautiful, each one offering a different interpretation of how the past and present could be woven together. But more than their aesthetic appeal, he could see the love and respect that had gone into every detail. "I think," he said finally, "we should set up a meeting with Sarah Henley. I'd like to hear more about her process and see if she understands the full significance of what we're considering." Catherine's face lit up with relief and excitement. Really, William confirmed. "But I want to be involved in every aspect of the design process. If we're going to do this, it needs to represent both of us completely." "Of course," Catherine agreed quickly. "I wouldn't want it any other way." As they prepared to leave for their morning engagements, Catherine found herself looking at Diana's ring with new eyes. Soon, it might transition from being something she wore daily to something that was preserved and honored in a different way. The thought was both exciting and slightly daunting. "Do you think she would approve?" Catherine asked quietly as they walked toward the door. William paused, considering the question seriously. His mother had been someone who embraced change and growth, who had constantly evolved in her approach to royal duties and her personal style. "I think she would love the idea of her gift continuing to grow and change with our family," he said finally. She always believed that the best way to honor tradition was to make it meaningful for each generation. Catherine smiled, feeling a sense of peace about the decision they were moving toward. The day ahead was full of engagements and responsibilities, but this conversation had given her something to look forward to, a project that felt deeply personal and meaningful. As they left Kensington Palace for their first engagement of the day, Catherine caught sight of her reflection in the car window. Diana's ring sparkled on her finger, as it had for so many years. Soon, it might be joined by something new, something that told the continuing story of the love it had helped to symbolize. The decision wasn't final yet, but the possibility felt right in a way that surprised her with its clarity. Perhaps the most fitting tribute to Diana's memory would be to let her gift continue to evolve, just as the family she had loved continued to grow and change. The car pulled away from the palace, carrying them toward their duties for the day. But Catherine's mind was already moving toward the future, toward the possibility of creating something that would honor the past while embracing everything that was yet to come. The following Tuesday morning arrived with an unusual energy at Clarence House. Queen Camilla was having her weekly breakfast with her closest advisors when her private secretary approached with a request that would change everything. Prince William and Catherine had asked for a private audience, which was not uncommon, but the timing felt significant somehow. Camilla had grown into her role as queen consort with remarkable grace over the years. The woman who had once been viewed with suspicion and criticism by some members of the public had won hearts through her dedicated service, her genuine warmth, and her unwavering support of King Charles. She had learned to navigate the complex relationships within the royal family while maintaining her own sense of dignity and purpose. "They've requested to meet this afternoon," her secretary informed her. "Prince William specifically mentioned that it was a personal matter they wanted to discuss with you privately." Camilla raised an eyebrow at this. Personal matters between her and William and Catherine were usually handled more informally, often during family dinners or casual encounters at royal events. The formal request suggested something more significant was on their minds. "Did they give any indication of what it concerns?" she asked, sipping her morning tea. "No, Your Majesty. Only that it was something they wanted to share with you before making any public announcements." The phrase public announcements caught Camilla's attention. In royal circles, personal matters that required public announcements were usually significant life events, pregnancies, titles, major charitable initiatives, or changes in official duties. She ran through the possibilities in her mind, but couldn't quite settle on what William and Catherine might be planning. Camilla had developed a close relationship with both William and Catherine over the years. Initially, there had been some natural awkwardness, given the complicated history between Charles and Diana, but time and mutual respect had built genuine affection between them. Catherine, in particular, had shown remarkable grace in welcoming Camilla into family events and supporting her initiatives. "Clear my calendar from 3 to 4 this afternoon," Camilla instructed. "And please ensure we have complete privacy. No interruptions unless there's an emergency." The rest of her morning was filled with the usual royal duties. She visited a literacy center in South London, where she spent time reading with children and discussing the importance of early childhood education with teachers and parents. It was the kind of engagement that had become her specialty, genuine, meaningful interactions that made a real difference in people's lives. But throughout the day, her mind kept returning to the upcoming meeting with William and Catherine. She found herself wondering if they were planning another pregnancy announcement, though she thought Catherine might have hinted at such news during their last family gathering. Perhaps it was related to their children's education or a major charitable initiative they wanted to launch. As 3 o'clock approached, Camilla found herself in her private sitting room at Clarence's house, a space that had become her sanctuary within the formal structure of royal life. The room reflected her personal taste, comfortable furniture, family photographs, and fresh flowers that were changed twice weekly. It was here that she conducted her most personal and important conversations. William and Catherine arrived precisely on time, as was their custom. Camilla noticed immediately that both seemed slightly nervous, which was unusual for the couple who had grown so comfortable in their royal roles. Catherine carried a small leather folder, and William's posture suggested he was carrying the weight of an important decision. "Thank you for making time for us on such short notice," William began as they settled into the comfortable chairs around Camilla's tea table. "Of course," Camilla replied warmly. "You know you're always welcome here. Can I offer you some tea?" As the tea was served, Camilla studied the couple more closely. Catherine seemed excited but apprehensive, frequently glancing at the folder she had placed beside her chair. William appeared thoughtful, occasionally exchanging meaningful looks with his wife. "So," Camilla said once they were all settled, "what's this personal matter you wanted to discuss?" Catherine and William exchanged another look, and then Catherine leaned forward slightly. "It's about my engagement ring," she began. "About Diana's ring." Camilla's expression immediately became more serious and attentive. Any discussion involving Diana required careful navigation, regardless of how much time had passed or how comfortable the family had become with her memory. "We've been talking about making some changes to it," Catherine continued, her voice careful but determined. "Not abandoning it or diminishing its significance, but perhaps evolving it into something that represents our family as it is today." The words hung in the air for a moment as Camilla processed what she was hearing. This was certainly not what she had expected, and she could immediately understand why William and Catherine had wanted to discuss it with her privately before making any public moves. "Tell me more about what you're thinking," Camilla said, her tone neutral but interested. Catherine opened the leather folder and began laying out the jewelry sketches that she had shown William earlier in the week. "We've been working with a designer who specializes in creating new pieces from existing jewelry," she explained. "The idea would be to create a ring that incorporates all the stones from Diana's original ring, but in a new setting that includes representations of our children and elements that are meaningful to our marriage." Camilla examined the sketches carefully, noting the obvious care and thought that had gone into each design. The proposed rings were beautiful, clearly designed by someone who understood both the aesthetic and symbolic requirements of royal jewelry. "The original ring would be preserved completely," William added. "It would be carefully documented and stored, perhaps eventually to be displayed as part of royal history or passed down to one of the children when they're older." Camilla continued to study the designs, her mind working through the implications of what they were proposing. She understood the sensitivity of the situation. Diana's ring was not just a piece of jewelry, but a symbol that carried enormous public and emotional significance. "What prompted this idea?" she asked finally, looking up from the sketches to meet Catherine's eyes. Catherine took a breath before responding. "Several things, really. I've been thinking a lot about legacy and what it means to honor someone's memory while also moving forward with your own life. The ring is beautiful and meaningful, but it represents a specific moment in Diana's life, not the full story of who she became or what she meant to your family." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I want our children to have something that connects them to their grandmother's memory, but also represents their own story, their own place in the family history." Camilla nodded thoughtfully. She had wrestled with similar questions about legacy and memory throughout her own journey within the royal family. "And you feel that creating something new would achieve that better than continuing to wear the original ring?" "I think it would allow both things to happen," Catherine replied. "The original ring could be preserved and honored as the historical artifact it is, while this new piece could serve as a living symbol of how Diana's legacy continues to grow and influence our family. William leaned forward his chair. We wanted to discuss this with you because we know how carefully these kinds of decisions need to be considered. We're not just talking about our personal preferences, but about something that affects how Diana's memory is honored publicly. Camilla appreciated the consideration they were showing. The couple could have made this decision privately and simply announced it to the family afterward, but their choice to seek her input showed maturity and respect for the complex dynamics involved. Have you considered how this might be received by the public? Camilla asked. Diana's ring has become almost as iconic as she was. People have very strong feelings about it. We have, Catherine replied. And we think that with the right presentation, it could actually be seen as a beautiful tribute to Diana's memory. The idea isn't to replace or diminish what she created, but to show how her influence continues to shape our family in meaningful ways. Camilla picked up one of the sketches again, this one showing the proposed ring with small stones representing each of the 3 children. The design was elegant and clearly crafted with love and respect. This stone here, she said, pointing to one of the smaller gems. What would this represent? That would be for Charlotte, Catherine explained. A small pink diamond to represent our daughter. And these would be for George and Louis, she continued, indicating 2 other small stones integrated into the design. So Diana's grandchildren would literally be part of the ring, Camilla observed. Exactly, William said, his enthusiasm beginning to show. It would make her legacy more immediate and personal for them. Right now, they know about Grandmother Diana's ring, but it's something from before they existed. This would make them part of the story. Camilla was beginning to see the emotional logic of their proposal. She had watched William struggle at times with how to keep his mother's memory alive for his children, while also helping them understand their own place in the family history. This approach could address both needs simultaneously. What does the designer say about the technical aspects? She asked. These stones from Diana's ring, they're quite specific in their cut and quality. Sarah Henley has assured us that every stone would be preserved exactly as it is, Catherine replied. The sapphire would remain the centerpiece, and all the diamonds would be incorporated into the new setting. Nothing would be altered or damaged in any way. And if you ever wanted to recreate the original ring, it would be completely possible, William confirmed. Sarah has proposed creating detailed documentation of every aspect of the original ring before any work begins. If needed, the original could be perfectly recreated at any time. Camilla was impressed by the thoroughness of their planning. Clearly, this wasn't a decision they had reached lightly or without careful consideration of all the implications. There's something else, Catherine added softly. I've been thinking about what Diana would want. From everything I've learned about her, from the stories you and Charles have shared, from the way William talks about her, she was someone who embraced growth and change. She wasn't afraid to evolve or to find new ways to express her values and her love for her family. The observation struck Camilla as particularly insightful. Diana had indeed been someone who constantly evolved throughout her public life, finding new ways to use her position to make a difference and express her authentic self. She also loved beautiful things, Camilla added with a slight smile, and she would have loved seeing her influence continue to shape your family in such a thoughtful way. Catherine smiled back, feeling encouraged by Camilla's response. That's exactly how we hope people will see it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each processing the conversation and its implications. Camilla found herself thinking about the broader question of how the royal family balanced tradition with evolution, how they honored the past while serving the present. When would you want to move forward with this? She asked finally. We're hoping to finalize the design within the next few weeks, William replied. If we proceed, Sarah estimates the work would take about 6 months to complete. And the announcement? Catherine and William exchanged another look. We were thinking that might depend partly on your thoughts, Catherine said. We want to handle this in a way that honors everyone involved and helps the public understand our reasoning. Camilla appreciated their diplomatic approach, but She could see they had already made their decision and were hoping for her support. What kind of announcement are you considering? Perhaps something tied to a meaningful date, William suggested. Maybe around the anniversary of our wedding or Diana's birthday. Something that emphasizes continuity and celebration rather than change for its own sake. We were also thinking about including information about how the original ring will be preserved and honored, Catherine added. Maybe announcing that it will become part of a special exhibition about royal jewelry or family history. The ideas were sound, showing that they had thought carefully about the public relations aspects of their decision. Camilla could see that with the right presentation, the story could indeed be received as a touching tribute rather than a controversial change. I have to ask, Camilla said, leaning back in her chair. Are you absolutely certain this is what you want to do? Once you make this change, it will be very difficult to undo the public reaction, regardless of whether the original ring could technically be recreated. Catherine was quiet for a moment before responding. I am certain, she said finally. I've been thinking about this for months, and every time I consider it, it feels more right. I want to honor Diana's memory in a way that also serves our children and our marriage. This feels like it accomplishes both goals. William nodded in agreement. And I've realized that my mother would want her gift to continue growing and evolving with our family. She wouldn't want it to remain static, frozen in time. Camilla could hear the conviction in both their voices. This wasn't a decision they had reached casually, and she could see that they had considered the emotional, practical, and public relations aspects thoroughly. In that case, she said with a warm smile, I think you should proceed with your planning. I'd be happy to help with the announcement strategy when the time comes, and I think Charles will be supportive as well, especially if we present it thoughtfully. The relief on Catherine and William's faces was immediate and obvious. They had clearly been nervous about this conversation, unsure of how Camilla would respond to their proposal. Thank you, Catherine said sincerely. Your support means everything to us. Of course, Camilla replied. Family decisions like this should be made together, with consideration for everyone involved. I think you've done that beautifully. As they began to gather up the jewelry sketches, Camilla found herself thinking about the broader implications of what they were planning. In a way, it represented exactly the kind of evolution that the royal family needed to embrace, honoring tradition while adapting to contemporary needs and values. One last thing, she said as they prepared to leave. When you do make the announcement, I'd like to be part of it. Perhaps we could do something together that shows family unity around this decision. Catherine's face lit up at the suggestion. That would be wonderful. Would you consider wearing one of your own significant pieces for the announcement? Something that shows how jewelry can carry family history forward. Camilla smiled at the idea. I have just the thing. Charles gave me a beautiful bracelet for our wedding that incorporates stones from several family pieces. It might be perfect for reinforcing the message about honoring the past while building for the future. As William and Catherine left Clarence's house that afternoon, they both felt a sense of relief and excitement. Gaining Camilla's support had been crucial for moving forward with their plans, and her willingness to participate in the announcement would help ensure that the public received the news positively. For Camilla, the conversation had been enlightening in ways she hadn't expected. She had seen a new side of Catherine's thoughtfulness and William's maturity, and she had been reminded of Diana's own capacity for growth and change. The proposal wasn't just about jewelry. It was about how families honor their history while continuing to write new chapters. That evening, Camilla shared the conversation with Charles over dinner. His response was immediate and supportive, echoing her own feelings that William and Catherine had approached the decision with appropriate care and consideration. Diana will be proud, he said simply, and Camilla knew he was right. The decision was essentially made, though the details still needed to be finalized. Within 6 months, the world would see Catherine wearing something new, something that honored the past while celebrating the present and future. The ring that had once symbolized Diana's engagement would evolve into something that represented the continuing legacy of her love and influence within the royal family. As Camilla prepared for bed that night, She found herself looking forward to the announcement almost as much as Catherine was. It would be a beautiful moment of family unity and a testament to how love and memory could continue to grow and change across generations. The ring that had captured the world's attention when Diana first wore it was about to begin a new chapter in its story, one that would include grandchildren Diana had never met and a daughter-in-law who had worked tirelessly to honor her memory, while forging her own path. 6 months later, the private workshop of Sarah Henley buzzed with quiet excitement. The master jeweler had spent decades creating pieces for aristocratic families around the world, but this particular commission felt different. The weight of history, the public significance, and the personal meaning all combined to make this one of the most important projects of her career. The new ring sat in a specially designed velvet box, catching the light from multiple angles as Sarah made her final inspection. Every diamond was perfectly positioned, every detail executed with the precision that royal jewelry demanded. The central sapphire, Diana's sapphire, glowed with the same deep blue fire it had possessed for decades, but now it was surrounded by a setting that told a new story. 3 small stones, each chosen to represent one of William and Catherine's children, were integrated seamlessly into the design. A small pink diamond for Charlotte sparkled beside the central sapphire, while 2 perfectly matched white diamonds representing George and Louis completed the family portrait in precious stones. The band itself featured delicate Celtic knotwork that referenced William and Catherine's wedding ceremony, creating a piece that was both deeply personal and unmistakably royal. Sarah had documented every stage of the creation process with photographs and detailed notes. The original ring had been carefully disassembled, and each component cataloged before the new setting was even begun. If anyone ever wanted to recreate Diana's original ring exactly, it would be completely possible using Sarah's meticulous records. The phone call came at exactly 3 o'clock, as scheduled. Catherine's private secretary confirmed that the Princess of Wales was en route to the workshop for the final viewing and, hopefully, approval of the completed piece. Catherine arrived accompanied by 2 protection officers and her lady-in-waiting, the small entourage that had become routine for any private appointments. But, despite the security presence, the atmosphere in Sarah's workshop was intimate and personal. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah greeted her with a respectful curtsy. "I'm pleased to tell you that the ring is complete and ready for your inspection." Catherine's hands were trembling slightly as Sarah opened the velvet box. The ring was even more beautiful than she had imagined from the sketches and mock-ups they had reviewed over the past months. The way the sapphire caught the light was exactly as she remembered from Diana's original ring, but everything around it spoke to her own story, her own family. "It's perfect," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "Sarah, it's absolutely perfect." The jeweler smiled with obvious pride. "Would you like to try it on?" Catherine nodded, extending her left hand. For the first time in over a decade, her ring finger was bare. She had removed Diana's original ring that morning in a private ceremony at Kensington Palace, with William and the children present. It had been an emotional moment, but also one filled with anticipation for what was to come. The new ring slid perfectly onto her finger, the sizing exactly as it should be. Catherine held up her hand, watching as the stones caught the workshop's carefully designed lighting. The piece felt both familiar and completely new, honoring the past while firmly rooted in the present. "The children's stones," she said, turning her hand to see how each small gem caught the light. "They're exactly what I hoped they would be. Each one was chosen specifically for the child it represents," Sarah explained. "The pink diamond for Princess Charlotte has a particularly beautiful clarity, and the stones for Princes George and Louis are perfectly matched. They'll grow up knowing they're literally part of this symbol of your family's love." Catherine was quiet for a moment, processing the full emotional impact of wearing the completed ring. "William is going to be amazed," she said finally, "and the children will be so excited to see their stones in place." The practical details of the handover took only a few minutes. Sarah provided Catherine with a detailed care guide, explaining how the new setting should be cleaned and maintained. She also handed over a leather portfolio containing all the documentation about the ring's creation, including the detailed records of Diana's original piece. The original ring is being held in the secure storage facility we discussed, Sarah confirmed. It's fully documented and preserved, ready for whenever the family decides how they want it to be displayed or passed down. Catherine nodded, understanding the importance of preserving Diana's ring exactly as it had been. This wasn't about erasing history, but about allowing it to evolve and continue growing with the family. The drive back to Kensington Palace gave Catherine time to process what had just happened. She kept looking down at her hand, still amazed by how perfect the new ring felt. It was distinctly hers in a way that Diana's ring, despite years of wearing it, had never quite been. William was waiting in their private sitting room when she arrived, along with George, Charlotte, and Louis. The children had been told that their mother was getting a special new ring that would include representations of them, and their excitement was obvious. "Can we see it now?" Charlotte asked immediately, bouncing slightly in her chair. Catherine smiled and extended her hand, showing the family the completed ring for the first time. The reaction was everything she had hoped for and more. "The blue stone is the same one from Grandmother Diana's ring," William said, his voice filled with wonder as he examined the piece up close. "Yes," Catherine confirmed. "And these smaller stones are for each of you," she continued, pointing out each child's representation. "That's mine," Charlotte exclaimed, clearly delighted by the pink diamond that sparkled beside the central sapphire. George and Louis leaned in closer to see their own stones, and Catherine explained how the jeweler had chosen each piece to represent their unique personalities and places in the family. "It's beautiful, Mummy," George said with the seriousness that was becoming typical of his developing personality. "Grandmother Diana would like it." The simple statement from their eldest child brought tears to both William and Catherine's eyes. This was exactly what they had hoped for, a way to keep Diana's memory alive and meaningful for their children, while also creating something that belonged to their own family story. "I think she would too," William agreed, putting his arm around George's shoulders. The family spent the next hour talking about the ring, with Catherine explaining the various design elements and their meanings. The children were particularly fascinated by the Celtic knots on the band, which reminded them of stories William had told them about their parents' wedding ceremony. That evening, after the children were in bed, William and Catherine sat together in their private sitting room, finally able to process the significance of the day privately. "How does it feel?" William asked, taking Catherine's hand and examining the ring in the soft lamplight. "Right," Catherine replied without hesitation. "It feels completely right. I love Diana's ring, and I was honored to wear it, but this feels like mine in a way that's hard to explain." William understood completely. He had felt some nervousness about the project, wondering if changing his mother's ring might somehow dishonor her memory. But seeing the completed piece, seeing how it made Catherine and the children feel, he knew they had made the right decision. "The announcement is scheduled for next week," Catherine said, referring to the carefully planned public revelation of the new ring. They had decided to announce the change during a visit to a children's charity that had been close to Diana's heart. The symbolism felt appropriate, showing how Diana's legacy continued to influence their work while also introducing the ring in a context that honored her memory. "Are you nervous about the reaction?" William asked. Catherine considered the question carefully. "A little," she admitted. "But I think when people understand the reasoning behind it, when they see how we've honored Diana's memory while also creating something meaningful for our children, they'll support it." The public relations strategy had been carefully developed with input from the palace communications team, Camilla, and King Charles himself. The announcement would emphasize continuity and love, explaining how the new ring allowed Diana's influence to continue growing with the family. "Camilla has been wonderful about the whole thing," Catherine added. Her suggestion about wearing her own family pieces during the announcement was brilliant. The plan was for both Catherine and Camilla to wear jewelry that incorporated stones from previous generations, showing how royal families had always evolved their treasured pieces to reflect current realities while honoring past meanings. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. Catherine wore the new ring privately, getting used to its slightly different weight and feel. The children continued to be excited about their inclusion in the piece, frequently asking to see their stones and hearing again about how each one had been chosen. On the morning of the announcement, Catherine woke early and spent a few minutes looking at the ring in the morning light streaming through their bedroom window. Today, the world would see it for the first time, and everything would change. The charity visit itself went perfectly. Catherine and William arrived at the Children's Center wearing complimentary outfits. Catherine in a deep blue dress that echoed the sapphire in her ring. William in a navy suit that showed their coordination without being overly obvious. Camilla joined them at the event, wearing the bracelet she had mentioned to Catherine months earlier. The piece sparkled with stones from several generations of royal jewelry, providing the perfect visual reinforcement for the message about honoring family history through evolving traditions. The moment came during a roundtable discussion with older children at the center. One of the teenagers noticed Catherine's ring and commented on how beautiful it was. Catherine smiled and explained that it was new, created to honor her late mother-in-law while also representing her own family. The blue stone was Princess Diana's, she explained to the fascinated children. But we added stones for each of our children, so now Grandmother Diana is part of their story too. The teenagers were clearly moved by the explanation, and their genuine positive reaction was exactly what Catherine had hoped for. These young people, some of whom had been helped by charities Diana had supported, understood immediately the loving intention behind the ring's evolution. The official photographers captured the moment perfectly. Catherine's hand as she gestured while talking to the children, the ring clearly visible and beautiful in the natural light. The images would become iconic, showing the new piece in its perfect context of continuing Diana's charitable legacy. After the public portion of the event, Catherine, William, and Camilla met privately with the charity's leadership team. During this smaller gathering, they were able to provide more details about the ring's creation and the reasoning behind their decision. Princess Diana believed in moving forward while honoring the past, William explained to the group. This ring embodies that philosophy perfectly. The charity leaders were visibly moved by the explanation and by the honor of being chosen as the venue for the ring's public debut. Several of them had worked directly with Diana and could see the clear connection between her values and the approach William and Catherine had taken. The drive back to Kensington Palace was filled with relief and satisfaction. The announcement had gone exactly as planned, with genuine warmth and understanding from everyone who had heard the explanation. That couldn't have gone better, Camilla said as they sat in the car together. The children's reaction was perfect, and I think the media coverage will be very positive. Catherine looked down at her ring, now officially public after months of private planning and creation. It feels good to not have to hide it anymore, she said. The secrecy was necessary, but it's nice to be able to wear it openly. Within hours of the first photographs being released, the response from the public and the media was overwhelmingly positive. The story of the ring's evolution was being presented exactly as they had hoped, as a loving tribute to Diana that also celebrated the continuing growth of her family. Social media was filled with comments from people who understood and appreciated the thoughtfulness behind the decision. Many noted how the inclusion of the children's representations made Diana's legacy feel more immediate and personal. Royal jewelry experts were consulted by various news outlets, and their responses were universally positive. The technical excellence of the work was praised, as was the emotional intelligence behind the concept. This is exactly how royal jewelry should evolve, one expert commented to a major news outlet. It honors the past while serving the present, and it creates something that will be meaningful for future generations. By the end of the day, Catherine felt a deep sense of satisfaction and peace about the decision they had made. The ring was no longer a secret project or a source of anxiety about public reception. It was simply part of her daily life, a beautiful symbol of her family's love and history. That night, as she prepared for bed, Catherine removed the ring and placed it carefully in its designated spot on her dressing table. Tomorrow would bring new engagements, new opportunities to wear it publicly, and new chances for people to understand the love and thoughtfulness that had gone into its creation. The ring that had begun as Diana's engagement symbol had successfully evolved into something that represented the continuing story of love within the royal family. The past was honored, the present was celebrated, and the future was embraced through a piece of jewelry that would now become part of royal history in its own right. As Catherine turned off the lights and settled into bed beside William, she felt grateful for the journey that had brought them to this point. The new ring wasn't just beautiful. It was meaningful in ways that went far beyond its obvious aesthetic appeal. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to share its story and to show how love and memory could continue to grow and evolve across generations. But tonight, Catherine was simply content to know that they had honored Diana's memory while creating something beautiful for their own family's future.